Oh, hello, folks. It's Ken David Stewart back again. My previous video was a continuation of my play called Roswell 1947. Now, a lot of people may not have been following the play during the summer when I was writing episodic versions of the play, and it did gather a fair amount of interest. Uh, So what I'm going to do in this video, I tried to put together sort of a synopsis of the play and the main action that was taking place in it, sort of the plot, you might say. But I got bogged down at a certain point. But I think what I'll do, if there's enough interest, is I'll just read the whole play right from the beginning to you, but not on this video per se. What I shall do is give you a brief synopsis of the play so far as I had gotten today. Now, so if you have an interest in this play, and it's intended as a comedy and it's got science fiction in it, you could follow on in my next episodes, where I'll take you right back to the beginning. Now, for a brief synopsis, the story takes place in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Now, this play is strictly fiction. There's certain characters and points that were real characters and real places, but let me tell you, it's all a work of fiction, so don't take it seriously. I don't think you'll be able to anyway. Okay, some townspeople report a loud crash and bright lights in the sky. These are the old guys who hang outside the Roswell General Store. Another main point of action is a local rancher wakes up to find his field covered in strange metallic material that he is unable to identify. Now, this part does actually take place in the real Roswell story. And I'm warning you again not to, get my story mixed up with the real Roswell story, though there's certain points that may intersect a bit. So the old guys report their sighting and what they hear to the local radio station. The rancher who finds the metallic material puts his find in a bag and takes it to the sheriff's office. Meanwhile, a college professor, an archaeologist, is out on a field trip in the desert with a group of his students. They're looking for some original Aboriginal artifacts, but they end up finding what appears to be a crashed spacecraft. While the professor and the students are trying to help the crashed passengers, because they did find passengers from the flying saucer or the spaceship, they discover that one of the aliens is still alive. I believe 3 or 4 dead, and one is still alive. Now, shortly after that, an army general and a private arrive and to check out the craft site. The crash site. And the general, over the professor's vociferous objections, takes the alien to the Roswell hospital in the army truck. While Mac the rancher takes his bag of metallic objects to the sheriff's office, the sheriff phones the Air Force base to let them know about what the rancher has found. The army official tells the sheriff that they will send out a military officer to investigate as soon as possible. Now, after showing his discovery to the sheriff, Mac heads off to the local tavern, Dusty's Tavern. Well, there he meets Floyd the barber from the Andy Griffith Show. Floyd convinces Mac to take his find down to the local radio station. When Mac is at the radio station giving his interview, he is accosted and arrested by General Kane at the radio station. Mac is then thrown into the back of the general's army van. The general found out where Mac was after listening to his radio interview when they were driving around in the army van. Now, Mac is taken to the Roswell hospital in the van with the general, and there the general orders a nurse to give Mac a shot of horse tranquilizer because he wants to deal with him later. So Mac is put into a storage closet or janitor's room at the hospital where he's effectively unconscious. However, when Mac wakes up and the sedation wears off, Mac escapes from the hospital through a window in the storage room, actually breaks the window. As he is escaping, two dog catchers see Mac stumbling down the street. Now, Mac appears to be impaired because he's still kind of stoned on the horse tranquilizer, and now the dog catchers, not knowing the history behind this, assume that Mac is high on drugs or in some way seriously impaired or even possibly psychotic or having a psychotic episode, because what he's saying is very much he's talking in delusions. Now, they believe that he should be taken to the Roswell hospital, whereas ironically where Mac just came from. Now, Mac, of course, not wanting to go back to where he just escaped from, ends up stealing the dog catcher's van, which will greatly assist him in his getaway attempt. Now, shortly after, General Kane and his private find the two dog catchers hiding in a blue trash bin, because what happened is their one dog they caught, a rather large Rottweiler, had escaped. Now, Dennis is the town mortician. He receives a call from General Kane. The general asks Dennis if he has 4 child-sized coffins. When Dennis arrives at the hospital with the coffins, he is stopped at the door by a military security officer. The military security officer escorts Dennis out of the hospital. As Dennis is being escorted out, he sees a nurse he knows named Jane. Jane was in the operating room when an autopsy was being done on one of the dead aliens. When Dennis gets back to the funeral home, he calls Jane the nurse. Nurse Jane answers his call and tells Dennis to meet her at Dusty's Tavern in about 15 or 20 minutes. When Dennis arrives at Dusty's Tavern, Floyd the barber is still there drinking. Floyd manages to use some camouflage, a plant actually, to listen in on Dennis and Nurse Jane's conversation. And Nurse Jane, during the conversation, drew a picture of the alien that was in the autopsy room on a napkin, and Floyd copies this down on his shirt sleeve. Jane explains to Dennis what she witnessed in the operating room. She tells Dennis that she saw doctors doing an autopsy on the alien, and then there were photographers and camera people also present. Meanwhile, back at the Roswell City compound, the dog catcher's supervisor becomes concerned when the two dog catchers do not return with the van at quitting time. This is very unusual for them. The dog catchers also make it to the radio station, and then the story goes on from there. So I am going to do some short readings from right from the beginning of this play. I even have trouble. I know the synopsis of the story goes on and on from there, from one incident to the next. But instead of telling you the whole story right now, I think I'll just leave the synopsis for there. Thank you for listening. If you have any interest, like I said, I'll soon be broadcasting right from the beginning of the play Roswell 1947. Okay, this is Ken David Stewart signing out, and have a great afternoon.